Hey, somebody needs to pop the popcorn. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. I thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by WisdomHarbor.com. For less than 1 gallon of gas a month, you'll have access to original content only found on WisdomHarbor.com that will have a positive effect on your family and your career. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, master chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of WisdomHarbor.com. That's Wisdom, HARBOUR.com. Observations and answers, that's what we usually do here on The Professional Noticer, and this week is no different, but the format will be. Last week, a conversation occurred that included 4 film producers, a film director, and me. We thought you might enjoy the discussion. These are the core people bringing the Heart Mender to the screen. So from Los Angeles, Chicago, Nashville, and Orange Beach, Alabama, here you are.
Welcome to the Heart Mender, aka Island of Saints. We're going to get into that here in just a second. Producer roundtable.
Nice movie poster in the background there, Adam.
Yeah, we got a little, if I can point to it here, right there, little sneak peek at a concept poster.
It's nice.
So I'm just going to jump right in with the elephant in the room. So, Dan, you fell in love with Island of Saints.
Okay.
Andy Andrews, you wrote Island of Saints. Now it became the Heart Mender. What are we calling this project?
We're going to call it an amazing thing. We also to be determined. Yeah, Island of Heart Mender. Now it's
There you go.
Well, we do have other choices because through the years I have had people come up and give me other names. I've had people come up and say, your book, The Heart Monitor, is my favorite that you've ever written.
The Heart Monitor.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, man. That's good. Well, so we're doing this because we want to get Andy Andrews fans need to know about this project. We're turning the Heart Mender book, previously Island of Saints book, into, we'll call it a major motion picture at this point. I think we're hiding, I don't know if we're being elusive on what it actually is. It's going to be a big project. What's this story about, Andrew? Do you want to tell us what this project's all about?
Well, I mean, probably the coolest thing about this story is I'm a history buff. I think all of us here are history buffs. And what attracted us to this story was there's a piece of history that none of us knew about. And Andy literally dug it out of the sand, which is pretty cool. So basically, this story is set in 1942 during the beginning stages of America's involvement with World War II. And the German U-boat force was active in the Gulf of Mexico. And for a period of time, there were U-boats that were sinking American supply ships in the Gulf of Mexico. And these cargo slicks were washing up on the Alabama beaches and the Florida beaches. And there were actually about 7,000 people that were killed just off of the Gulf Coast shores of the United States, when I heard that just blew my mind. And so our story takes place in that setting where a wounded German officer from a U-boat washes up on the Alabama coast and is found by an American war widow. And so we follow the story of them learning to see the power of forgiveness and second chances and hope. And then there's this action-packed twist at the end that you guys all of your socks will be blown off, and we can't wait to share that with you. But I'm not going to, because that would be a spoiler.
Yeah. Spoiler. You can read the book and spoil the movie.
Yeah, hey, there you go. You should read the book. The book is actually very well written.
How does it feel
So-
pitching the movie in short form to the author sitting right there?
I mean, it's a little.
It was good. It was good, but
I feel
there has to be some nerves there.
Sounded great
There's
to
always
me.
nerves in pitching anyway, especially when you're pitching to the
Yeah.
guy that wrote it.
Andy, how'd I do?
Well, you're right. Nobody knew about this. I didn't even know about this. And people ask me all the time, did this really happen? And I'm like, well, I've got this stuff. There's a Knight's Cross and the buttons that were in the can. These pictures were in there. But when I saw this one I could see this guy in the picture, and there's Hitler. And I'm thinking, what is this doing here? And so my research, it led me to something that if you know to look for it, you can find it easily. It's just,
And to be clear, Andy, you found that stuff. You didn't get that on eBay, right? Like, I mean, I know that you alluded to digging it up literally, but it's in the book, so we're not giving anything away. But tell that part of the story, because I want to hear it from you. I mean, we've interacted, but I've never really heard you tell. You're sitting there doing an errand for Polly or something like that, right? I'd love to hear it from you.
And it's like the first part of the book. I'm just kind of describing where I live and that I was taken out a wax myrtle that was killed in one of the storms. And digging in the sand is not too hard, but there's a lot of roots. And so, you're hitting stuff. And I hit something that didn't feel like a root. And it was like a rusted can. And when I pulled it out, stuff fell out of it. And I'm picking up these things, and there's a badge here that has an anchor on it that I did not, for some reason, I mean, you can see it plainly when I tell you, but for some reason, when I looked at it at first, I didn't see UB. I just saw the anchor. And then these pictures, there was another one with a guy and a woman with a baby in a wagon, and a ring that had some kind of writing on it that I didn't know what it was. But I started doing the research, and as I said, if I had known to immediately Google Nazi U-boats, Gulf of Mexico, World War II, I could have found it very easily. But who knew to look for that? Even after 9/11, when the FBI was going around into different ports of entry in America and making sure that things were safe, one of the FBI guys said to a big crowd, this is a brand new thing for New Orleans. They were in New Orleans and said, this is a brand new thing for New Orleans because we've never had to protect the Gulf of Mexico against a foreign power. And one old man raised his hand and said, yes, there has been a time. And so there, you're right, Andrew. It was not just a little bit. It was a lot. They were sinking a lot of ships, and there were thousands of Coast Guard, Navy personnel, and merchant Marines killed. But Roosevelt was blacking out the news for it. But meanwhile, along the coast here, bodies were washing up on the beach.
And what? Wow. Well, I have a question. What? You New York Times bestseller. Sort of a very well-known author. You've written many books.
You're kind, John. You're kind. It's been a long time for me.
Yeah, that's funny. But you've said that this is your favorite, your favorite book that you've ever. Why is that? Considering some of the books you've written.
Number one, it's a book I didn't intend to write. I was on a whole nother project when I kind of got derailed by this search, and and the story's in the book. The first part of the book, I'm just kind of telling about finding it, and when my search was just kind of going nowhere because I didn't know what to Google. I didn't know, and at some point, Polly said, "You need to ask the old people." around here. And that's when it kind of broke loose. But the reason this is my favorite book is because, number one, it's the best story. The story just blows me away. And
true story.
Yeah. And so it just blows me away. It's one of those kind of things like hidden in plain sight, because, the story is about how this young American war widow finds this guy in a German uniform laying on the beach, almost dead. And of course, her husband has just been killed over in Germany, and she is going to help this guy. But when she rolls him over and sees the uniform and he says something in German, she just wants to beat him to death. But he says something, and I won't reveal what, but he says something that stops her, and she decides that she's gonna just like drag him on in, and so the story is about how they hide in 1942 small town America, and why they hide, and what happens because of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Dan, I wanted to bring this in. You fell in love with the book. You've wanted to see this story because it's so incredible, made into a movie for like 10, 12 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I read the book years and years ago. I was a fan of Andy's, and this is a little bit of different work than some of your other work. I mean, it is a story, it is a thriller, it is a page turner, true story, but it really reads like a novel. And of course, there's some things in there that are deeply meaningful. There's some themes throughout that are powerful, that have the ability to honestly make a difference in our world, and now more than ever. But because the story is true, and really just watching it, and honestly just the fact that you're the one that dug it up, Andy, call it providence, whatever, somebody else digging up the tree and they find it ends up in a shoebox, and you wrote the book and read it, and now here we are talking about turning it into something for the screen to share with a wider audience, and really just made phone calls, and having worked with Jon and told him about the book, and just really for years and years, how some of these projects, Andy, I think in some of our meetings, you said it's a project whose time has come. And so even though, Adam, 12 or 13 years in the making, and here we are, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, it wouldn't have the impact that we believe that it can have. And so I'm just excited about it. It is of course, you read the book multiple times, given copies to other people. And so here we are. I'm just fascinated with the historical side of it. It's a part, not just because of the themes in the book, it's a part of the World War II history that not a lot of people know about.
Well,
and that's what's fascinating to me.
And a very timely story.
We teased about it at the first, but the book came out as Island of Saints, and it didn't sell. And so the publisher thought, gosh, this is really good. And I thought it was the best book I had ever written. And so they re-released it, but changed the name. And so sometimes, people go, occasionally somebody will bring an Island of Saints, and I go, you're the one who bought it. So.
Well, to talk about a little World War II history, Frank, the legendary filmmaker, one of my, the great inspiration for what we do is Frank Capra, and his, the film he did when he came back from the war, he was doing war films for the government, was It's a Wonderful Life, which was initially sort of not received by critics or audiences, and yet came back after its copyright expired and sort of the television and VHS explosion. But it was always his favorite film. It was always the one that he raved about. And oddly enough, great stories just find their time. They just do. And I think a lot has to synergize with culture, but that's one of the greatest films ever made, and the film he's known for. And yet it didn't, it had to sort of recycle and find its time. It's interesting how stories do that.
So I hope the book has already recycled, and now it's time for the movie. So, Edgar has known this book as long as Dan has.
Well, that's so funny. I met Andy in the 80s when he was a wonderful comedian, and probably still is.
Are you going to tell jokes before this thing is over?
No, I could do some stand-up while the credits roll, but probably won't.
I was music director for Kenny Rogers from 76 to 91, and Andy was one of the opening acts that traveled with us for on and off for years. So we got to know each other during that time. And I just always gravitated towards him. He's a great guy and a great comedian at the time. And I kind of lost touch with him and caught up with him, interestingly enough, at a Dave Ramsey rally in Los Angeles, where I was warmly received by Andy. And shortly after that, every book he ever read showed up on my doorstep, autographed. And I read the Heart Mender. I think that was probably awesome. 10 or 12 years ago, Andy.
Yeah, probably so.
We've sort of,
that's cool. I didn't know that you started sending them all your books.
We never really lost touch with each other, but we weren't in touch with each other until that time. And as soon as I read that book, I thought, I had just started producing movies. And I thought, oh, this is a movie. And I was right.
Well, I'm thrilled. And this whole process has been, I know everybody has heard horror stories about authors and their books being turned into film. And so, I was kind of a little tense the first time we met. And I came home and I said, man, if you can have an 11 out of 10, it was an 11. I love these guys.
That's great.
I love their vision for it. And I told a friend of mine, I said, when we met that time for that 2-day breakdown of the story to get it into scenes and cliffhangers and all of this, I came home and I told a buddy of mine, I said, I haven't read the book in 8 or 9 years. And these guys have all read it 20 or 30 times in the last 6 or 7 months. And I said, so they would ask me a question and go, is this okay with you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't really remember it.
Well, the beautiful thing about the story, honestly, is, when we were there in Nashville, it's all in the book, everybody. Yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot that needs to be done. It's just a story. Just get out of the way. Right, Jon, you were talking about the best stories, right? They kind of find their time. Yeah. This is one of those stories, just honestly and truly, if I can just say it this way, just don't screw it up.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? The story is there, just tell the story. And Andy, that's kudos to you. But the fact that it's a true story really is another one of the reasons why, Adam, you asked why I love the book so much. That is the reason why. It's because it's a true story, and so just get out of the way, let the story do the work.
I'm really excited about this process now and about working with all you guys and being up there for 2 days and seeing just a passion, and not just that you guys have for the book, but the passion that you guys have for that time period. Jon, your grandfather was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner.
Yeah, and I remember him saying freedom isn't free, and he was saying that when I was very young, holding his Medal of Honor, and I didn't know what it was, and I knew he was severely burned because he grabbed the phosphorus bomb and threw it out the window of a B-29 Superfortress, but it was instilled just the cost of the freedoms that we enjoy and the honor that we should sort of, the tribute that we should pay to those that sort of paid that price has always been a huge part of our family. And then also, I just probably didn't, as a teenager, really think about his story enough. I mean, I had a great relationship with him, and it wasn't really till his funeral that I was like, man, what did I miss? Which is one of the things I love about this book, this obsession of discovery and an almost forensic storytelling, to find, and uncover, a hidden gem in a story. It was very, very similar to my grandfather's story. And I just think it's such a nostalgic, incredible time. And this is such an interesting story of forgiveness and friendship and love. And it's instantly like, I had no idea this this existed. So I just love this time period, and I've always wanted to do something in this time period. And so it was nice. It took for me also, it took a few years of Dan as we were working on other things saying, I'm telling you, this thing's amazing. And then it all just came together. So,
Dad bugged you quite a bit from what I hear.
Yeah. So it's funny. Dan and I go back all the way to, music videos. Actually, Dan started producing music videos even before we did features. And so, and we did very well. We won a lot of, awards doing music videos. And even at that time, I remember him talking about this story. And then we started doing the feature films. And so from Mom's Night Out, we're doing Woodlawn. He was just saying, I'm telling you this Heart Mender, and it just kept coming up, and then we wrapped, American Underdog. You notice I'm just dropping my resume. I can only imagine an American Underdog and other films that are available in stores everywhere. The Steve McQueen documentary, the Certified Fresh American Underdog, which is at Walmart and Target, wherever you want to buy it. You can do that after this call. Anyway,
go watch it
while we're doing those but I'll tell you this: the theme of our, they say a filmmaker finds their story and tells it over and over again. We just really fell in love with inspirational, true stories and stories that are sort of infused with virtue and truth and what we call a rush of hope. And so I it was interesting when I finally sat down to read the book. Everything just came together, and again, the stories just find their way. They have a way of hitting you from multiple angles, and then and I love collaboration and getting. It's unbelievable what happens when you get teams of creatives together on an idea and you work the idea collaboratively. And I think a lot of times just partnering with the source material, like this movie that, again, you can buy anywhere, American Underdog, is there had been it's been for 8 years. There had been 4 drafts of the script, a ton of development costs, but nobody had involved Kurt and Brenda as partners in the process. And that always is crazy to me. Yeah. It's just a better way into the product. So what I love to do is get teams of people and work the story collaboratively and just watch that magic happen. And who better to do that with than the author of the book in this case? And so it's fun to see. More people should work like that, and it's fun to get a lot of great people together. And I love this sort of illustration of draft horses, where one draft horse can pull 8,000 pounds, 2 can pull 25,000 pounds. So there's this exponential effect of creativity when you're working together and collaboratively. And I think we all felt that. So there's a great team assembled around this project, and it's just a worthy story. And it's one of those things that you can't stop thinking about. Really, really entertaining, but also really meaningful, at a time in history that very few people know about. And so it's I can't wait to see it. This is how I am. All these years of Dan saying this would be such a great project to do as we're doing all these other things. And then this moment now where I'm this has to happen now. I want to see it right now. That's the thing. So that's been the switch.
We got to do it
now. I'm so just reserving I told you so for when we're sitting at the first screening, Jon. Right? That's okay. There's love. There's love.
Yeah.
I know there's years of
things that I can't quit thinking about right now is. I don't believe anything happens by accident, and Dan is right. I think the timing is right for this. One of my my first novel, The Traveler's Gift, I could not get that book published. 51 publishers turned down The Traveler's Gift, and of course now that book's sold several million copies.
Now you get to say I told you so to 51 publishers.
Well, here's the thing.
Those are fun emails to write, by the way.
I went through years of trying to get that done, and then it went in the book. Finally got it published. It went in the bookstores, out of the bookstore, and now it's in the back of a warehouse. And so I started just kind of giving them away, and one of them made it to somebody who gave it to somebody, gave it to somebody. Somebody gave it to Robin Roberts. And then Good Morning America called it one of the 5 books you should read in your lifetime. And Robin talked about it on Good Morning America. And Diane Sawyer held the book up and she said, "This is a book America needs at this time." And I thought, wow, at this time, because when I'd been trying, we had not been through 9/11, all that stuff. And I look at this book, the one that this is being made from, and I cannot think of an angrier situation than a German officer needing help from a young woman who the Germans just killed her husband. I can't think of an angrier situation, and yet that this book, this movie has waited, and now I don't know that I can think of an angrier time in America. And I think there is only one answer to our angry time in America, and I think it's found in the theme of this book.
Yeah, I think the idea of the space between us is we're so tribed and in America and worldwide, and it's never been like this in my lifetime, at least. And that was the theme of two people that on set could never have a relationship or hold anything in common, finding the relationship that they find over the course of the movie is a very, very powerful theme. And just this idea of how forgiveness can truly heal and restore. And I just think, it's very, I think the time for it is now. And I think a lot of the themes of the story are themes that we're hoping for today or wrestling with, of like, I think that why can't we, interact in a different way? So I do believe that there's, the themes are much more resonant today than they were, even just 5 years ago.
I've got a question for the Noble Story Company guys. Of course, you guys, development company, you guys find incredible stories. I reached out to Andy's camp and said, hey, I'd love to talk about Island of Saints, Heart Mender, and Andy, you referred me to Edgar. So Edgar, our first conversation, I called you, brother, and just was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. You guys have the rights. But I want to know what drew you guys to the story, because I don't think we've talked a lot about production and development and story and reading scripts and all that other stuff, but I don't know that Andrew, I've ever actually heard the genesis of Noble getting a hold of it and what you guys fell in love with.
Well, I think the backstory to that is pretty simple. I think we were just kind of chewing the fat with Edgar one day. Said, hey, Edgar, if you were going to make another movie, what would it be? And he was like, I've always wanted to turn the Heart Mender into a movie. And I was like, the Heart Mender? What is the Heart Mender? And he's like, well, back when, and he started talking about Kenny Rogers and how he met Andy. And then he told us the story of the Heart Mender. And, I mentioned I'm a history buff. And when I was like, wait, what? There were U-boats in the Gulf of Mexico. I think while we were talking, I went on my phone and bought the book. And Amazon Prime delivered it to my house the next day. I think I finished it that night around 1 a.m. And I called Edgar the next morning and said, Edgar, we need to turn this into a movie. And he said, I know, this is what I've been saying.
And I'm just like, wait, what's going on? What's going on? I gotta catch up.
Adam finally read the book 3 weeks later. We said, let's go for it.
I don't think it was that long.
I'll say this, though, if you want the premium Heart Mender experience, because I've given up, except for like the Bible, I've given up reading for being read to. So I've I've young children, so I've pretty much completely switched over to Audible. I love Audible. And Andy is quite the voice actor. He not only performs the book, but he
did a great job.
All the parts in the book. I wrote a book. There's a book, Beyond Valor, that I wrote. I'm just dropping all my products in this call just because I want my children to follow.
That book is awesome because that book is the story of your grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when we came to doing the audiobook, I just did the first and last chapter because I was afraid of, what audio, doing all these voices and all these parts. And, when you read the Heart, I mean, the accents and the character, I'm like, man, this is like some voice talent as well. So if you want the real premium Andy Andrews Heart Mender experience, get the audiobook and you'll get
it's great
along with the words. It was I was like, this guy's really good. I should cast him in something, anyway.
Hey, side note on that. Side note on that story time with Dan. We're in Nashville and we're cracking the story. Spent 2 days, got whiteboards, right? And all of a sudden, Andy, we're all in the room, right? And all of a sudden, Andy's, brother, I think you were thinking about a certain part of the book and you were trying to find it and you found it. And we were talking about a story beat or a scene or something. And all of a sudden, Andy starts reading to us the part of the book that we were talking about from a script standpoint. And you started doing the voices. And you were reading, you were locked into the book. And it got real quiet in the room, and we all start looking at each other like, we literally are right here while the author of the book is doing the audio book version of it. And it was like, just keep going. Don't stop. Just keep going. Cool. It's like story time with Andy. We all became like 11-year-old kids just leaning and listening to you talk. It's great. John's right. The audio version is amazing.
I guarantee you one or two of us, I bet, have probably dropped that into a conversation about, the other day when Andy Andrews was reading his book to me right beside me. I realized how great I am. Anyway, it's great.
I finally made it.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, another point, John, you were mentioning how significant World War II history is to you and your family. I have part of my interest in World War II is for the same reason. My grandfather came to the United States during and as a result of World War II. And in the convoy of ships that were bringing people over from Europe, all but one of the ships were sunk by U-boats, and his was the only one that survived. And so not only is there a, family connection to this, but also to the U-boat component of this. And it's just a fascinating time period. And I really resonate with, Andy, what you were saying about this is a story for now. Now is a time where people need to be talking to other people and hearing opposing viewpoints and finding, common ground and all of these things that shape our human experience. And I feel like people have forgotten how to do that these days.
I agree.
And it's just going to be fun to watch. I mean, it is, it's so funny because if you try to peg it into a genre, John, you mentioned some themes, right? There's these virtues, there's forgiveness, it's a love story, it's a story of friendship, but it's also a thriller. Like it's a riveting, like white knuckle. Is this really happening? And so it really kind of takes you on a ride as well. So it's kind of hard to pin it into just this is what it is. There's a lot there for a lot of different audiences.
There's also this whole theme of discovery.
Women are going to love it. Guys are going to love it. Yeah.
That's right. It's
you kind of go on this.
It's a mystery too.
It's everything that you love all in one. It has that sort of epic love story, sort of English patient, feel and tone, and yet it's also this situation that is inherently dangerous. And sort of has a ticking clock to it, and so there is that sort of thriller part of it. And then there's I love what Ken Burns, the great documentary filmmaker, calls emotional archaeology. There's this idea of someone actually unearthing this story and piecing it together and seeing what the manifestations of that story are in the present day. And it's just a really cool. And it's also, a story is about its characters and about their relationships. The characters are great, the relationships are great. And then what I love is that themes that can truly transform, and the story is packed with those themes. And so, it's also one of those that if you just think about just the process of creating the story and the world that we would get to visually create. I mean, that's the unbelievable thing that we all get to do, is that these ideas that we write on a piece of paper actually, so many people, hundreds of people, help us get those ideas to a screen, and then an audience is. Well, I mean, I saw Top Gun last night, which is amazing, by the way. It's the idea that you get to experience it as if it's real, and if you think about just the visual scope and time, it's going to be a beautiful project and a meaningful and emotional one. And a thoroughly entertaining one. And I think a lot of different types of people will love it. I think it's a movie you can watch with your family. It's a movie you can watch on a date. It's going to be really special.
Yeah.
I wonder how many movies start with a conversation like we had when we started that 2 days, because I just wonder, because and I think this would be interesting for the listeners and the viewers, because I don't know how many of them have been in a in a first meeting about a movie. That I had not been, and so I wonder if they would be curious about this. I wonder how many movies start with an argument about what kind of movie it was going to be, because and not really an argument, but a discussion, because the first thing Jon laid out to us, he said, okay, very first, what are we making here?
Yeah.
What are we making? And there was
the essence.
Yeah, and there was an argument for a thriller, argument for a mystery, argument for romance, argument for a war story, argument for, I mean, it was amazing.
It's an embarrassment of riches. I would say that if we have a sort of a secret sauce, it's in that story process that we were all a part of. And it's not ours. It's actually the best definition of it is in this. And, what did Picasso say? Good artists copy, great artists steal. That process that it really, I think, is most clearly defined in the book, Creativity, Inc., which is Ed Catmull's book on Pixar. And right in the center of that book is actually this thing that Pixar calls the brain trust. And they just have a very different way of attacking a story. Yeah. And I think that's the reason Pixar has led to what you're seeing and experiencing with a Pixar film that you might not know is just a story that over the course of a long time has just been refined by an incredible team in a collaborative setting. And they have rules for how that works. We've sort of adapted that system and made it our own, and to great results. So our past 4 films have gotten greenlit off the first draft, but it's because of a different type of process. And so I think that it's really fun. I don't know why. I think artists' insecurities sometimes keep them from a best idea wins, let's attack the idea together, collaborative environment. So it's sort of a scary environment to step into, but once you're in it, for me anyway, it's an addictive way to work because it's so much more gratifying. And the best moment is when you get to this great idea of which you can't trace its origin. Like there's a lot of voices in the room and everything is so good that you're like, and it's sort of like improv comedy, it's like you agree and you add and you agree and you add, and you do it to the extent that you don't even know whose idea it was in the first place. And so I think that's a really exciting way to work. And then this story, the uniqueness of it is there's so many ways into this story. And we thought, is it a movie? Is it a multi-part? Is it a mini? There's all these different ways to attack it because the story is so rich and because the characters are so good. And so the other argument of just what is this and how do we attack it was just by virtue of the richness of the material, Yeah. And so that's what makes our job fun.
Well, it's an honor doing this with you guys. I'll tell you that.
It's going to be fun to see it come to the screen.
Oh, that's great. And I'll throw this out there, and it's going to be vague. People have been asking, where are we going to see this? When are we going to see it? And I'm telling you, it's coming, and it's going to be where we
that's
can't
right.
tell you.
That's right. It's going to be somewhere awesome.
Let's dangle the answer. Well, friends, let us tell you. Thanks for asking.
I would say I'm as excited about the story itself as how we're going to present it to the world in a really unique way. And what I can say about it is I love one of the great music executives, Jimmy Iovine, said to will.i.am when they were doing Interscope, he said you could sort of try to just have a seat at the table or you can become the table. And that really changed will.i.am's career. And I like the idea of just more and more and more, the right table is forming and really, really talented people are getting around it. And it's fun to be sort of a catalyst to that. So you have what we do at Kingdom and what you guys do at Noble and all these other artists that are brilliant working collaboratively sort of on the first time towards a really big goal that we'll announce next year. And I think that, or this fall, it'll launch next year. And I think that is very exciting to me, just because we're all asking this question: what can we accomplish together that none of us could do alone? And this project is a huge part of it. So that's a very vague political answer, but the concept of collaboration amongst peers towards a common goal is just everybody's better. You know, what do they say? A rising tide lifts all boats. And it's fun to have these sort of collaborative endeavors where, you know, we got our own stuff going on, but we're going to do this. We're going to come together and do this. And that's happening more and more. And the more that happens, the more you begin to see, man, what we could accomplish is actually staggering when we work together. And so it's exciting to see this project as a manifestation of that idea that will grow and grow.
Well, and honestly, the people that win, it is the audience. I mean, the audience is the one that wins. I mean, they win from that collaboration, better product, just all around. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more thrilled to see this out there and people fall in love with it. And Jon, you were talking about being in that room. And Andy, you were talking about arguing and wrestling and that sort of stuff. When you have as many people in a room like that not just are trying to crack a story, but that deeply love the story, you know it's coming from a place of best idea wins. And then because of that, the audience ends up
arguing was probably the wrong term to use, because I never saw an argument. I mean, in 2 days, there was not an argument.
No, that was an amazing meeting. There was probably a dozen people in that room, and everyone had a voice. I mean, even Alex, who's taking notes, had something to say. I mean, everybody had something to say to their credit, but no one was shut out of the conversation. And never been in a development meeting like that. Usually it's the director insisting on his way or the highway.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think what I learned I did this, a movie, I keep dropping products, I'm sorry, a movie, Woodlawn, and then led to a movie called I Can Only Imagine. And in between those two, which was also something that nobody would say yes to. Every studio said no to it. It was same as your book, Andy. But in the middle, we did this postmortem and really studied, you know, what was sort of in the marketplace, a wonderful, a movie that I loved, but didn't accomplish the results that we'd hoped. And that was transformative and life-changing. And I actually think, just like a principle of leadership, which I know Andy is so passionate about, is I had to confront that within myself. One of the big defining differences between those two times, and by the way, staggeringly different results, we discovered a lot with new financial models, you know, insights in the marketplace. But one of the top, like, 5 maybe things that I discovered that I needed to change about myself. And I would say that by and large, if something's wrong with your company or your organization, something's wrong with you. That's very similar, you know, and sort of working down into the corporation. But I realized that I was at the time wanting to be the smartest person in the room, and just talked all the time. And it was just about my opinion being heard. I think I transitioned to a quest that I'm still on, and I don't get it right. If you know me, I still love the sound of my own voice, but to be the smartest person leaving the room. And that's possible because that's a more righteous quest, in the sense that what you try to do is you try to just build incredible rooms of really talented people. And then you actually lead with questions, and you listen, and you learn to symphonize ideas. And I think when you, and synergize ideas. And I think when you learn that discipline, you learn that, man, not much is impossible in life or in business, because you're listening to great people, and you're getting great people, and you're getting their energy focused around a common goal. So what I loved about that room and that process for us, and it just keeps working, is we're not fighting to be right. We're not fighting from a place of ego or for, you know, to win. We're actually just fighting for the best idea from different perspectives. And that's the conflict you want, that we're just trying to find the best idea and do it together. And the cool thing about those rooms is great can come from anywhere. And so you'll have someone that's just taking notes, which is a story intern, like Alex, say, you know, actually what I think, and it's like really, really great. And so those are the magic of those rooms. And I just think what I learned is, if you learn to listen, if you learn to assemble great rooms and listen, you can actually, you know, move mountains, you know, and it's cool to see. And it's a faster process. It's a more fun process. I really don't know. I just think people's insecurities sometimes keep them from it, but I think it absolutely just works. If it works for Pixar, it can work for us.
I will just say, I couldn't be happier with this. I feel like the time is right. I feel like what you guys are doing with the story is right. And I feel like I've got like 5 best friends. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Likewise. I want to come down. This is a conversation for another time, but I feel very similar. Just it's a very warm and look, first of all, history can be measured by moments in time and conspiracies of friends that all believe in the same thing. Like there's so many instances of that. Right. But I do, on another adventure, maybe Noble can make this as a non-scripted thing. I would love in our next conversation, your sort of interest in objects and in memorabilia and in the stories of things is so cool. In fact, after we were together for those 2 days, and I just caught your obsession with the story of things that you can hold and feel and touch. I was with my kids and we had this massive jar of change that my son has been collecting. He's 8. He doesn't quite know. He's like, I think this will buy a big car. I'm like, nah, that's not little car. But anyway, we dumped it out and we just started looking for the oldest ones and we started stacking them. And we found like a nickel from 1959 and started talking about like who was president and all this stuff. And so, but it was after that, it was an appreciation for artifacts and objects and stuff like that. I know that's one of the great obsessions in your life, and I found that truly interesting.
You got to swing by Andy's office, his studio. You could get lost there for.
It belongs in a
museum.
Are you just always on the lookout, or is there an object right now you're seeking out and trying to find, like Indiana Jones?
He just digs up wax myrtle trees. He's just digging up sand left and right.
Long before that, I get really interested in the stories that I'm researching. In a book I wrote called The Lost Choice, there's a scene in there from the Lusitania. And so I got really interested in the research I was doing for the Lusitania. And so right over here, I found out that Robert Ballard, the guy who found the Titanic, had explored the Lusitania. The Lusitania is only in 600 feet of water, and they've known where it was for years off the coast of Ireland. And he explored it with the robotics and retrieved some china from the first-class dining room and took pictures. And so I've got a book that's opened up that shows the first-class dining room in the Lusitania. I've got a picture of what that china looked like underwater after all these years. And then I've got a bowl and several plates and a cup from the first-class dining room in the Lusitania. And then I've got a steward's badge from the Lusitania and a postcard. When that ship sank, the mailbags floated, and I guess this was a back then kind of thing, but they actually posted all that mail. And so I've got a postcard that says,
wow.
We're landing in 2 days, and I've got a cold, and Granddaddy will call you when we. Then there is I've got a poster that the government used that to really raise money for World War I, and there's an enlistment poster that when I saw it, I thought, I don't know if I want to look at that every day, because it is so intense. But I've got it in a cabinet so people can see it.
So
but
cool.
it's a woman holding a baby sinking through the water. It's a drawing.
Wow! Oh wow!
And all it says is enlist, and so. But I get focused on those kind of things. When I did How Do You Kill 11 Million People, which is about the Holocaust, I really started verifying the things like, we've all heard of the yellow stars that the Jews wore, and 11 million people is the number of people that were killed by Nazi Germany. But most people don't even realize that only 6 million of them were Jews. The other 5 million, these were Christians and Italians and people without any proof of their residence, and Democrats and Freemasons, and they all wore a different color. And so I to verify that, I started haunting estate sales and this kind of thing. And so I've got a cabinet over here.
Andy's got like a whole museum there. It's just crazy.
The next show you should do is just Andy's Museum. Telling you, it's a non-scripted show. You should do that.
Dude, we got to do that.
John, you're right. To take your child, do that with those coins, and build that love of that mystery. Look at there. This is 1959.
Where has this thing been since 1959? I mean, and what was the world like then? And this coin was there. I mean, it's crazy to think about, And it was like everybody got in on it. All of a sudden, the whole family was digging through change. And it was just such a fun moment that one would typically just overlook, but that was after our time together. It's just the appreciation for those things it's interesting, So at any rate, cool. That's another show, another podcast is Andy's Artifacts.
Yeah, Andy, thank you so much, and thanks John, thanks Dan, Edgar, and Andrew, just everybody for joining. If the big question, if you want to follow this project, if you want to kind of see the development process, follow Andy Andrews on social media. I'm sure he'll share some things. Follow Noble Story Co. on Instagram, Facebook. We'll share as we can and when we can, and hopefully we'll be sharing.
Go read the book
soon.
Go read the book.
So check out the book.
It's using Audible credit.
Read the book.
That's what I did. It was great.
Yeah. Listen to the book.
It's incredible.
That's the story.
Do both,
Thanks,
but I'm
everybody.
telling you, the performance is pretty staggering. God bless you guys.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that. Stay close, and we'll give you updates on what's happening as soon as we know. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. 3D glasses for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional funding provided by themovievoice.com. Do you occasionally deliver information that just falls flat? Perhaps the announcements at church need some pep, or your kids could use a bit of help with their focus. That's where the good folks at themovievoice.com can help. Simply type in the basic message you'd like to deliver, and in less than an hour, themovievoice.com staffers will have your message rescripted, recorded, and delivered back to you. With a modicum of practice and the use of the speaker on your smartphone, you can lip sync your message with the delivery of your dreams. Can you imagine? You are about to embark on an extraordinary journey to a land of giants whose greatest enemy is a boy with a slingshot. Ride the waves in a boat with 1,000 seasick animals and the guy who rounded them up. Experience the story of the man eaten by a fish who lived to tell the tale. Critics are raving. This is Sunday school like you've never seen before. Perhaps you'll use themovievoice.com more at home. In a world where children do their chores or else, you'll notice that every bed is made. The garbage is taken out, all vehicles are washed, and the lawn is mowed twice a week. This is a place of yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, please and thank you. It's a planet with one ruler where respect is the law. You do what you're told, and you do it now. Nobody wants a spanking from Momzilla. So join today at themovievoice.com, brought to you from a galaxy far, far away.